Welcome to Talk Travel with Heather Tate, North Mississippi's podcast for savvy travelers. Talk Travel with Heather Tate is a weekly podcast that airs every Monday on the Shark 102.3 FM radio station based in Ripley, Mississippi, and is then released as a podcast. Travel advisor and travel enthusiast Heather Tate of Whimsical Destinations gives listeners expert travel tips curated through the years of personal and professional experience. By clicking subscribe, you'll have a new travel tip to add to your collection delivered to your podcast library every Monday. Talk Travel with Heather Tate is brought to you by Sun Bear Studio. Sun Bear Studio is a boutique recording studio in the heart of Ripley, Mississippi. When you record with us at Sun Bear Studio, we can mix, master, register, and publish your music, your podcast, or your family story. Email us when you're ready at sunbear@jc.media.
This program was recorded at Sun Bear Studio in Ripley, Mississippi.
Good morning, Northeast Mississippi travelers. This is Heather with Talk Travel with Heather Tate, and I'm so excited to share my adventures and tried and true tips with you. Whether you are also a seasoned traveler, a hopeful traveler, or currently an armchair traveler, meaning you're going to follow along with us from home for now. This is our 140th episode of Talk Travel with Heather Tate, and this week I'm going to share with you where we went for spring break, and that was Charleston, South Carolina. So I'm not only going to talk about Charleston, which is my favorite city in the U.S., but I'm going to talk about the experience of going to Charleston, which is a place that's very special to my husband Logan and I, but going to Charleston with our two kids, London and Christian, ages 12 and 8. The reason why I'm going to talk about it traveling with children is because it's a completely different experience going this time, because the first time I ever went to Charleston was on my honeymoon almost 18 years ago. And the second time we went was 2 years later for our second anniversary. So my experience with Charleston originally was as an adults only vacation. And I will tell you, it's a completely different experience going somewhere with the kids. Now, some places more so than others. But this is the first time we have been back to Charleston in 9 years. We actually went with London when he was 3 years old. So it's been a long time since we went. And so again, that was different versus now. He's a preteen, almost a teenager. And our 8-year-old Christian, it was his first time. So Charleston, a beautiful southern city, very walkable. And I think that's a great thing to do with kids. When you're traveling somewhere, when you can walk from place to place, that's a really fun thing for them. And so we stayed right in the heart of downtown and Lodge Alley Inn. We could walk to the water, we could walk to restaurants, we could walk to where we were taking the ferry to Fort Sumter, so we could walk to where we took a horse and carriage ride. So many places. We didn't even have to get in our car, which is great because parking in downtown Charleston is not the easiest. But when I thought of Charleston originally, I thought of being this completely romantic destination. And it is. So I didn't really think of it as being as family friendly as now I know that it can be. So I'm going to share with you what we did on spring break and give you some ideas. If you're thinking of a future family vacation, Charleston may not have even been on your radar. But when I tell you that this is a city that smells as good as it looks, it really is. It reminds me a little bit of New Orleans. You've got the beautiful architecture, European influence for sure. That's one thing I love about New Orleans is that it feels like you're in a different place. Just the way the architecture is and the restaurants, and there's so many restaurants that have outdoor seating. Same with Charleston. Also, the weather was amazing. We definitely got lucky because it was in the 70s every day except for the day we left, and that's when the rain came in. So we could not have asked for better weather. And so speaking of climates and good weather, I'm going to talk next week all about how you can chase 70-degree locations year-round. So that's kind of what the inspiration was for me, because when we were there walking around, we did so many things outside, and the weather was just amazing. And I thought, this is the type of weather I would want year-round. And we've had some great weeks here in Mississippi, too, where we've had some beautiful weather. But what are some things that we did? Incredible restaurants. I wanted to do a mix of what you would consider family friendly, because again, my boys are 12 and 8, but I also wanted to try some of the really nice restaurants. And there was a restaurant in particular called Magnolia's. It was just steps away from where we were staying in Lodge Alley. And it was on my list to go to 18 years ago on our honeymoon. And I remember when we looked at the menu, we looked at the pricing, and we thought, this might be somewhere we should come back to. We were newly graduated college students, and we thought, we're going to try to stretch our budget a little bit. We'll come back one day. And I will say, this restaurant was worth the wait. So many amazing Southern chefs here that are also trying innovative things. Now, I'm a vegetarian. My 8-year-old Christian is a vegetarian. And my husband and my 12-year-old are not. So they will eat seafood. They don't eat a lot of red meat, but they will eat meat. So that gives them a lot more options. For Christian and I'm always having to look at the menu first to see, okay, is there something we can eat? And Magnolia's had a vegetarian platter. And when I say it was the best vegetarian platter I have probably ordered at a restaurant ever. We saved it for our last night. It was white tablecloths, very much like I felt like I was in The Notebook. And, it was a beautiful restaurant. And from beginning to end, it was my favorite meal. But that wasn't the only restaurant that we ate at that was incredible. I also believe when you're traveling with kids, one of the best things you can do is find locations that have outdoor seating so you can dine al fresco, and also by the water. So we had some great meals by the water. Saltwater Cowboys, which was on an island off of Shem Creek, which was right over the bridge from Charleston. We also ate at Fleet Landing, another place we could walk to from our resort there right in downtown Charleston, the only restaurant in downtown Charleston on the water. We had some delicious brunches, and it was great because some of the brunch places we went to, again, we could just walk to. They were very convenient. We were near the market, which was open daily, where you had artisans that were set up. You had basket weavers making this beautiful seagrass baskets. You had artwork. You had all different things that were being made that were right there that we could explore the market. We could take the horse-drawn carriage ride throughout the city, and these are regulated, so that means you don't know which path you're going to take until it's kind of like a lottery. Like they roll the dice to see which way you're going to go, but it doesn't matter because everywhere you go, you're going to be immersed in history. And so we explored Charleston during the day by foot. We explored it in a horse and carriage ride. So again, really smart idea when you're traveling with kids is to find other modes of transportation than just driving from place to place. We also explored it at night on a ghost tour. Now, this took some convincing because my oldest did not think he wanted to do a ghost tour. But I convinced him. I was like, this is going to be more of a history and stories, than it is an actual trying to scare you experience. And so we got to see a whole nother side of Charleston by taking the ghost tour. It turns out he loved it. My 8-year-old wished we hadn't done it because it's one of those things that he kept thinking about. So know your kids, know what you think that they would like, and make sure that it's a family-friendly ghost tour. Ours was family-friendly, and it's still there's some really interesting stories in Charleston. And so it's something that they will remember the stories from the ghost tour. Oh, there's so much more I want to share with you, but that is all the time we have for this week's episode of Talk Travel with Heather Tate. But tune in for the podcast, which will be the extended version, and I'll share with you more of the things we did in Charleston with kids. Okay, we are back, and this is the extended version for our Charleston with Kids trip for spring break. We talked about how we went on a horse and carriage ride, how we did a really cool ghost tour one evening. We walked around a lot. We went to the market. We also went to Fort Sumter. This was a great experience. So if you can get to a national park, national battlefield on a trip with kids, get some history, I really recommend it. One thing that was great about Charleston and Fort Sumter is that you could take the ferry there. That's the only way to go. So you take the ferry. It's right beside the aquarium. So we made a choice. We're like, okay, the aquarium will be great to do with small kids. And that's what we did when we went when London was only 3. But we decided this time we're going to go to Fort Sumter, and we were going to go kayaking. So we didn't have time for everything. So the aquarium was what I let go on this trip just because there wasn't time to do everything we wanted to do. We had 3 full days because we were only there for 4 nights. So it makes a really good long weekend trip. You could easily do a whole week if you wanted to. But we had to let go of something, and I had the aquarium on my list for those rainy days that we just didn't happen to have while we were there, so we took advantage of being outside. But at Fort Sumter, the way you get there is by a 30-minute ferry ride. And it's educational along the way. Not only are you going through the harbor in Charleston, but you can also see dolphins. We had dolphins that were following us there and back. And you get a little bit of the history on the way there. They point out different things for you from the ferry. And when you arrive, you only have an hour. So it felt a little rushed. You don't have a lot of time to explore at your leisure like you would in some, national parks or battlefields where you can just look around and when you're finished, then you leave because the ferry was leaving in an hour. But one thing I would recommend that we did was we went at the very last time of the day. So they did the flag ceremony where they take the flag down, the American flag down. And anyone who wants to take part can do that. And it was a really incredible experience. I shared some pictures on our Facebook group, Heather and Logan Tate Whimsical Destination. So if you get a chance, definitely check those out so you can see the flag ceremony. Other things that we did, we went to Magnolia Plantation and Gardens. Now, this was on my list, and I know that I've shared this with you before, but I like to have an annual pass for botanical gardens. And so Memphis Botanical Gardens, where we went to see the trolls, we've now been twice to see them, and they're there through May. So if you have not seen the trolls yet, this is a plug to go see them because it's a really cool experience, makes a great day trip. But because we had the annual pass for there, when you go on other trips throughout the country, you should look and see if there's any botanic gardens that are nearby that are also included in that annual pass. So we were able to go to Magnolia Plantation and Gardens, and the gardens portion was included then. So we didn't pay any additional for that. It was a beautiful day to explore the gardens. And I'm going to be honest, this was for me. I told the boys we were doing lots of things for them, going to Fort Sumter, and we went to the world's largest inclusive playground in North Charleston where they spent hours. They had a Ninja Warrior themed playground element that was really for preteens and teenagers. And so many times, 12 and up get excluded from a playground because there's just not as much for them to do. But this one had a lot for London's age to enjoy, and I had to pry them away from this playground after about 2 hours. But we were doing things that I knew they would enjoy. The gardens was all for me. I wanted to see the camellias blooming, the azaleas. I knew it would be amazing. We did the house tour, and we also did a boat tour where we could see alligators. This made Christian a little nervous because even though he enjoyed seeing them from the boat, it was a marsh boat ride. He was not excited because the very next day I had told them we were doing a 2-hour family-friendly kayaking tour. Now, this is a new thing for us. I've been looking forward to the day when we could take advantage of doing some things like this, going kayaking. And we've been kayaking in the ocean when we've gone to beaches, resorts in the Caribbean. But this is our first time in the U.S. to do a kayaking tour. It was a fantastic experience. My boys fought me every step of the way until they actually got on the water and realized how much they loved it. So we did a tandem kayak. So Logan and Christian were together, and London, my 12-year-old, and I were together. And we had a guide. We were in a group of about, I would say, 10 to 12 people. And we went out in the salt marshes. And if you've read the book Where the Crawdads Sing, that's what it felt like. Like I felt like I was out on a kayak in the marshes. We didn't see any alligators. They told us we probably wouldn't, but they said we could see dolphins because we were really close to the Atlantic Ocean. They actually did see one, but we missed it. Our heads were turned right at that moment that the dolphin splashed. So we kept looking the rest of the time, did not see him again. But we saw lots of birds, turtles. At one point, we saw the jellyfish. And it was just beautiful kayaking through the marshes. And it was not the experience that London was dreading. He was thinking it was going to be a swamp type experience. The water was very clear. It was beautiful. And we went first thing in the morning. So that's when the water was going to be calmer. And so it was a wonderful experience. The other thing that we did that I really wanted to do was go to Angel Oak. I love big trees. And Angel Oak is either 400 to 500 years, they estimate, a large living oak tree. And you can go visit during the day. There's certain hours. There's all these rules, no picnicking, no climbing. You cannot even really do much more than touch the oak tree. They want you to be, very conscious of the impact that you make, because this oak tree has lived through centuries and has seen so much, so many different Europeans coming. You know, you have the Spanish, the English, the French, so many hurricanes and, world, wars and natural disasters, and this tree still stands. So it is one of the oldest living things we've ever seen. So I wanted my boys to experience that. And we also made sure to go see Rainbow Row. My boys were tired of Rainbow Row by the time we finished that week, because we went not once, not twice, but thrice, because I love Rainbow Row. It's just a group of beautifully painted, pastel-colored townhouses, which makes a great place to take pictures. And Charleston in itself is like walking in a postcard. So I really feel like there's something for everyone. With my boys, they love history. They like to have hands-on experiences. So that's what they got by going to Fort Sumter on the ferry, by kayaking. So they had those experiences getting to walk along the ghost tour. But I also wanted to make sure that they had the history, and that they, got to hear the stories of the past. And so that's why I think Charleston makes an amazing place, not just to go for a couple, which is wonderful for a romantic weekend. It's very popular for girls' trips, some incredible shopping there. We did not do a lot of shopping because, again, this is Charleston with kids. So there's a whole nother episode that could be done with Charleston with the girls, or a romantic Charleston. But if you have not been to Charleston yet and you've been thinking like, we need to go somewhere different for spring break next year, or a fall trip, even the summer, but keep in mind, it is going to be hot, even though there's always a breeze. It's somewhere to keep in mind for your family trip. So wherever you're going, whatever you're doing this week, I hope you make life an amazing adventure. Remember, life is short. Take the trip, make those memories. You won't regret it. Tune in every Monday at 11 a.m. to turn your travel dreams into travel plans. If you have a question, comment, or suggestion for an interview, or for access to this interview, go to our website, shark1023.com, and click on the podcast tab. This interview can also be found on Apple, Google, and Amazon Podcast. Keep it tuned to the Shark 1023 and start planning your next trip.
Thanks for tuning in to our daily programming. All of our programs are released as podcasts on the major podcast platforms, where the information can be downloaded and shared for months. If your business or organization would like to take this unique opportunity to sponsor a show that not only is broadcast as a radio program, but also a podcast, give the Shark 1023 headquarters a call at 662-837-1023. Imagine your commercial in this space every week. Give us a call.
This show is made possible by JC Media, LLC in Ripley, Mississippi. JC Media owns the Shark 102.3 Classic Rock FM radio station where the show is hosted, and Sun Bear Recording Studio where the interviews are recorded. We need your feedback and support. If you listen to the podcast on a player like iTunes, Google Podcasts, or Amazon Music, please subscribe to the show and leave us a review. We also have an email in which you can share your feedback. That email is theshark1023@gmail.com. Subscribe to our podcast on your favorite app, or stream episodes online at shark1023.com/podcasts. Today's episode was produced by Melinda Marsalis. It was edited by Rick Williams and engineered by Chris Marsalis. The podcast technician is Joyce Grady.